bit. Okay. Well, I thought what I would do with the time is take people to the Galapagos. Take people on an exploration of the Galapagos, some of the biodiversity, some of the endemic species, touch on the conservation work, really just immerse ourselves in some cool pictures and some cool videos from one of the most amazing places on the planet. So I've been lucky enough to visit twice, and I was able to visit a second time in August, kind of right as things were coming out of COVID, when um, the naturalists were starting to get back out into the field. And we're so excited to be back and sharing this magical place, these Enchanted Isles, with people from all around the world. So it was a great time to visit the Galapagos. I'm going to take you into that journey now through some pictures. And I've got a really cool kind of video montage of some snorkeling, some free diving that I was doing. So I'm just going to jump in here and share my entire screen. Actually, I'm going to do a window. That's going to be a bit easier. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. So we should see that now. And let's dive right in. So let's get people oriented. For those who might not know about the Galapagos, we have to travel to South America and to the country of Ecuador, right here on the Pacific coast. And then we have to go about 1,000 miles along the equator to come across the Galapagos. We're going to dive in a little bit closer and take a little better look here. So here we go. This is our archipelago, also known as the Enchanted Isles. And the Galapagos are all volcanically formed islands. So they formed over a volcanic hotspot. So the young part of the island is here. The hotspot is close to Fernandina. And Fernandina and Isabella are still volcanically active. And I believe Wolf Volcano erupted not too long ago. So they're volcanically active. As you head to the east, the islands, of course, are no longer volcanically active. They start to erode away. And by the time you get to the oldest islands like San Cristobal and Espanola, they are on their way to disappearing. So if you could follow the trail, this conveyor belt that moves away from the volcanic hotspot on the bottom of the ocean, you would find old islands of the Galapagos that had their time in the sun and have eroded away and faded beneath the surface. So there's actually a trail of these old islands leading back towards South America, which is kind of wild to think about. So just touching here on my way there, I flew over a pretty important spot in the world. Here's the Panama Canal. And as we know, it can save a massive amount of time instead of having to go all the way around South America. You can cut through Panama, through the canal. And as you can see here, it's a massive shipping highway. And you can see all these ships waiting to take their turn to get into the canal and bring those goods to the opposite sides of the world. So yeah, I just kind of have this map here just to put that in perspective too. Instead of going all the way around, you can cut right through the middle here and get to these destinations a lot quicker. Okay, so Guayaquil is where we flew into. It's a beautiful city. It's got some modern, it's got some old kind of style buildings as well. It's a beautiful place, but we only spent a very brief time there. You can fly to Quito as well, higher elevation. So some people may be a little more uncomfortable doing that, but those are kind of the two gateways to the Galapagos. And this is my home for my time there. This is the National Geographic Islander. It holds about 40 people in normal time, pre-COVID. When we went down, there were about 20 on board. So it was about half the visitors than usually would be on board. And Lindblad Expeditions is just an amazing organization. A shout out to Sven and Kristen Lindblad and their Wanderlust Fund, which is helping us fund some of our festivals this year, like the Women Blaze Trails Festival and the Global Biodiversity Festival, as well as the World Ranger Day Festival coming up in July. So a huge shout out to them. I'll share a link in a moment. But yeah, this is the National Geographic Islander. And this is what you do. You move through the islands and you can't dock, obviously. So you're hopping in and out of Zodiacs to go snorkeling, to go on, photo tours along the coast, to hike on the islands. These Zodiacs and the amazing Zodiac pilots get you into shore for your wet landings. So you're jumping kind of into the water, usually only until about your calves, but you definitely don't want to be wearing running shoes. And then the islands in the Galapagos are just mind-blowing because every single island is different. Every single island is like you're stepping into a new place and different species on these islands. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But, here's Daphne Major. Daphne Major, you can very well see this volcanic origin of the islands. And this island is a site of a very long running study of finches by Peter and Rosemary Grant. And this has been going for decades. And everyone always thinks of evolution on a scale of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of years. But actually, through their research on looking at the beaks of the finches, they've been able to show that evolution happens much quicker. And so during different times on the island, good times of good growth or times of dry, where the seeds get harder, they can actually see the selection for the beaks being a little bit thicker or a little bit thinner, which is wild. So taking part, place in the span of years rather than what we maybe think of tens of thousands of years and more. And then just, here, another snapshot of another island. This is Santa Cruz. You can see the volcanic rock. You can see it's an older island, so there's lots of tree life on it because, of course, the islands were barren when they first formed and then moved away from that hotspot. So that's another way you can kind of look at the age of some of the islands, is how much they've developed, how much life, how much plant life is on those islands. As we move through some more islands, here's San Cristobal, one of the oldest on islands. You can see very rocky terrain, a beautiful beach here. Moving through a little bit more, this is the other side of San Cristobal, and you can see this beautiful blue water, white sandy beaches, again, volcanic features in the background. This is Espanola, again, one of the older islands. And this is a blowhole here where the water is being forced up through the rocks. This, I believe, is a little tiny island off of Espanola called Gardner Island, and you can see the finches among the prickly pear cactuses. The mountain features of some of the islands here, like San Cristobal. This is Floriana, and you can see, again, really scrubby, and things are kind of wearing down a little bit with some erosion here. And again, you see the volcanic rock on the shore. So just an amazing diversity of islands here. And any given time, you could be in scrub or volcanic rock or on a white sandy beach. Really kind of amazing to explore. And the snorkeling, if you jump over that little island to that bigger one, Gardner Island there in the background, is just phenomenal. We'll get to that in a moment. Now, the life in the Galapagos is amazing. You've got a pelican here hanging out in the water, and you can see, captured a moment, maybe this fish's last glimpse of the sky before it slid down and into the stomach of this pelican here. And the penguin. So Popey last night from Global Penguin Society was talking about the penguins. He had a beautiful map showing the penguins' view of the world with Antarctica in the center and then the southern hemisphere kind of folded around it where you can find our penguins. And we have our beautiful tropical penguins here, about 2,000 Galapagos penguins left. And so anytime you get to see them is pretty amazing. So they can survive in a place like the Galapagos because the Galapagos is unique in that the waters around it are very cold and nutrient rich. So there's currents running along the bottom of the ocean full of nutrients that have sunk there and kind of broken down over long periods of time. And when those cold water currents hit the Galapagos Islands, it pushes that water up in a form of upwelling, which brings all that nutrient-rich water to the surface, which supports an incredible amount of marine life, including these Galapagos penguins, who have a nice temperature of water that they love and lots of food in that water as well. There's another picture of one of those Galapagos penguins. And it's pretty cool to be in the water when you're snorkeling and free diving and to have a penguin zip by or pop up next to you in the water. Now, this was an incredible spot to visit, and I wanted to share for a moment. This is Bartolome, and if you've ever seen the movie Master and Commander, one of my favorite movies. I love the book series by Patrick O'Brian, 20 incredible books, the Aubrey Maturin series. I highly suggest reading them. I think I've read the series, the 20 books, 4 times now at this stage. And so if you've watched Master and Commander, there's a very pivotal scene in the movie, and it takes place here with this pinnacle rock that we have here. And here's another view of it from the top of the volcano. So we're on Bartolome, looking over the pinnacle there, and then you can see Santa Cruz, another island in the Galapagos there in the background. And so, Floriana, I want to touch on this because I think this is one of the coolest things ever. This is one of the oldest postal services on the planet. So when whalers were the only people visiting the Galapagos for, hundreds of years, they could be out sometimes for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and more as they're trying to fill their hold with whale oil. And the mail service that they set up there was basically a barrel where they would leave mail and then hope that whalers heading back to the US or heading back to the UK would stop by, pick it up, and bring it back for them. So this has been going on for a long time, and it's still going on today. So you can write a postcard, you can leave it behind in this barrel, and then you can also look through it and find postcards close to you. And the idea is you're supposed to hand deliver them from the Galapagos. So just a fun thing to do. And ours hasn't come back yet. So hopefully one day, maybe years down the road, it's going to return to us, which would be pretty cool. So let's get back to the life. So we've got our land iguanas here. Beautiful, beautiful land iguanas. Very territorial. The males protect territory. They love prickly pear cactus, and they'll protect that territory because it's a good source of food. And of course, it's a good way to attract the ladies. My personal favorite, there's only a few spots you can find blue-footed boobies, and I just love watching them. You can see these beautiful blue feet. Incredible to watch them looking for fish. They look for fish. They dive bomb at the last minute. They pull their wings back into this perfect torpedo shape, hit the water, and then they're very awkward taking off. So that's something to watch too. But yeah, these beautiful blue feet. There's 3 species of boobies in the Galapagos. There's the Nazca and the red-footed. And I think we'll see a picture of both, the red-footed for sure, in a few moments. And so what's amazing about the Galapagos is life took a while to get there. So, plants, seeds could drift or blow in the wind. Insects, bats, birds could fly to the islands. And then reptiles. How did the reptiles get there? Well, reptiles can go a long time without food and water. And so big storms in South America would put a bunch of plant matter, leaves, palm fronds, trunks, into big floating mats, big floating islands. And it would sweep into the water tortoises. It would sweep into the water snakes and iguanas and things like that. And they would drift to the islands. And then that's how they got established. And so the animals there's so few predators that, over thousands of years, they just don't see humans as predators. So basically on the Galapagos, you can watch day-to-day life of the fauna on the islands, and they ignore you. They could care less that you're there. In fact, sometimes you have to get out of the way or you might be trampled in slow motion by a tortoise. So here is a male and female blue-footed boobie, and they're going through their courtship dance right now. And this can last for a while. And the goal here is the male wants to impress the female. And he'll try a lot of different things, but in particular, he's going to show off his feet. And you can see she's really analyzing that foot and trying to decide, is this a good choice? And the reason is because the more fish that the male is able to catch, the bluer his feet become. The pigment is transferred down into his feet, and nice, brilliant turquoise blue is what she's looking for. And so you can see he's doing his dance, and he is showing off those feet for everything that it's worth. He's picking up cool sticks like this to say, hey, check out this sweet nesting material. I can find really good stuff too. You can still see he's dancing there. And then this is sky pointing. So they kind of point to the sky and call out loudly. So you can see it's quite elaborate, and it can go on for a while. I can remember one time on my first trip to the Galapagos watching a male working so hard for at least 10, 15 minutes. And then the female deciding, nope, I'm out of here. I think there's better prospects. And I can almost see the look of defeat on the male boobie's face. And then, of course, successful, you get the chicks. So we have 2 chicks here on the nest, and they take turns, the male and the female, hunting, bringing back food. And then they feed it this style, a little bit of regurgitation action. And we've got a nice little shot of that. Intimate life happening. You can't come closer than 6 feet to the animals. But of course, if you have a camera, you can kind of pull in a little tighter and capture these wonderful, beautiful, close, intimate moments. Flamingos in the Galapagos. So it was neat to see them walking through this kind of salty little plain here and looking for little brine shrimp and things like that they like to filter out of the water. And that gives them that beautiful color as well in their feathers, the food that they eat. There's a pair there as they're kind of making their way through the shallow water. The sea lions are so much fun. It's so much fun to be in the water with them and swimming with the young ones. And then they're all over the shores, on the sand, on the volcanic rock. They're loud. They're having a good time. You can get moments like this with a pup, probably only a few weeks old, having some milk from mom. And what's unique about the Galapagos too is there's fur seals. It's pretty much one of the only spots where you can find sea lions and the fur seals together. And it's that nutrient-rich cold water. The fur seals are usually further south, but with the food that they like and the nice cold water that they like, the Galapagos is a great spot for fur seals as well as the sea lions. And so there we go, just a little peak moment there with an older pup. Lounging around in the water. The water is never empty. The waters around the Galapagos are full, from sea turtles to sharks to sea lions to octopus. The list goes on and on and on and on. There's no shortage of life in the waters, the nutrient-rich water of the Galapagos. We've got some satellite foot crabs on the shore here. We've got herons stalking the shore as well, waiting for fish to get too close to the surface. And then the Galapagos hawk. These are the largest predators in the Galapagos, the largest endemic predators in the Galapagos. So they'll eat things like the snakes. They'll eat things like the young marine iguanas. There are introduced predators, dogs and cats, rats, of course, but they're much smaller. But the dogs and the cats are introduced to the island. And of course, with other things introduced, from insects to plant species, the Galapagos has had a really difficult time eradicating a lot of the species, especially the smaller ones. But the programs that they have on the go right now are absolutely spectacular, from removing the goats and the cows to even programs to try and get rid of small insects. There's a tiny little fly that's affecting the marsh finches. It gets into their nests and can kill the chicks by feeding on their skin. And so not only do they have to get rid of the fly, but they also can't hurt any of the other native species. So it's a very challenging balancing act. And they also take the chicks and raise some of them in captivity as well to help the populations grow. So a lot of layers in some of the conservation projects as well. Another picture there in the air. The albatross, the waved albatross. They get that name because of the beautiful kind of wavy pattern you can see in their feathers here. And albatross are just amazing birds, largest birds in the world, incredibly large wingspan, largest wingspan, I should say, and flying birds. They mate for life. They can spend, up to a year on the wing, just gliding over the ocean effortlessly, picking their food right up out of the water. But of course, that's part of the problem as well, is they get caught on long line fishing hooks when they're grabbing the bait, and also plastics. Plastics can very much resemble some of the food that they eat, and sometimes you only get one chance at a meal. So it's easy to make mistakes. And then, of course, they feed that plastic to their young, which can lead to their death. So we have, again, a beautiful in the air shot here. We have some pairs here greeting each other. They do these amazing greetings when they get back to each other, kind of clacking their bills together. And then there's a chick there, and also hiding out in the background there is a Galapagos Mockingbird. A little fact here about the Galapagos Mockingbird: everyone talks about the finches. In actuality, Darwin wasn't that impressed by the finches at first. In fact, he didn't really label his collection very well. He noticed the tortoises and how they varied from island to island. And he also noticed the Galapagos Mockingbirds. And there's 4 different species in the Galapagos, varying on the different islands. So these are Espanola Mockingbirds. And it wasn't until later that he realized, oh no, the finches are an important part of the story. And he was kind of scrambling to get some of his collections back and to kind of identify some of the species. And they obviously became a big part of the story. There's a close-up of the baby there. And the marine iguanas. I love the marine iguanas. The only species of lizard that jumps into the water and finds or in the ocean and finds their food on the rocks. So they warm up, they jump into the ocean, they swim out like little crocodiles, and then dive down up to 10 meters, and they eat they eat algae off of the rocks. They get cold very quickly. They come back on shore, and then they have to warm up. And if you stand around them, you hear sneezing from the iguanas, and it's because they have to get the salt out of their body, and they have a gland in their nose. So they basically shoot salty snot rockets at each other all day long as they sit on the beach. And then you can see here, depending on what island you're on, you can find different coloration. So you can find some with these beautiful red colors. And if you're really lucky and it's the right season, you can find some with some of the green and red color during the mating season. And we talked about invasive species, and here it is in action. These are some goats on San Cristobal. And so you can see how close they get to the wildlife. You might be able to see this. I believe this is a frigate bird chick sitting here. And you can see that very easily the nest could be trampled by the goats as they're kind of just stripping the island of vegetation. And so there's lots of things to think about with invasive species. One of the most interesting stories is Rabida, where there were rats, and they wanted to get rid of the rats, but there were Galapagos hawks on the island who could eat the bait. Or the dead rats. And so they collected up all the hawks, sent them to a hawk hotel, and poison baited the island, wiped out all the rats, and then returned the hawks to the island. So you can see how complicated some of these operations can be. Here's our red-footed boobie. They come in two varieties. You can kind of get these beautiful white ones, and you can also get all brown ones as well. But you can see those distinctive, beautiful red feet. We've got humpback whales swimming along the coast. So here's one breaching. Let's get that out of the way. And then coming down hard after that breach. And Kicker Rock is kind of a really cool formation to see poking out of the water. It's also called the lion. I don't really see it. I definitely see the kicker part of it, but I don't really see that lion name. And the tortoises. We'll end off on the tortoises. We can't leave them out. Giant tortoises. Different species on each island. It would have been one species that drifted here in the past, but with different kind of, I guess, pioneers arriving on different islands over long periods of time. They don't interact with each other. You get these different species. Smaller ones, ones with big saddles so they can reach up to get higher vegetation. You get that speciation. You get the different species on the different islands because they're separated from each other. And yeah, they have lots of time to change. So there they are having a nice wallow. This is on Santa Cruz. And there we go. We've got the tortoise and the finch. I think that's a very nice piece to share, a nice spot to end on the images. And what I want to do is really quickly play a little video clip. I want to take you into the water of the Galapagos. So I'm going to stop this screen share, and we're going to wrap up with it. It's about a 2-minute video. So let's wrap up with this video, and then we'll be ready for what comes next. So here we go. Let me just grab it here for you, and we're live. All right. Well, that's a little peek of the Galapagos. So